I'm, I'm primarily making this video just so I can show how to use a starting clamp and flying clamps to start the mains and crosses on the tennis racket. Primarily this is going to be for an 03 tennis racket. This is a hybrid, but it has the O ports on the side, which is where the problem arises. What I'm doing now is I just opened up a set of string. I put the two ends together and I'm just pulling them through. If I can get all the knots out of it. This is just a cheap set of nylon that I'm going to cut out when I get done. Seems like it's got an awful lot of memory in it. Okay. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to come down about 6 inches. This is the center of the string, about 6 inches. If this is 40 feet of string, my long string now is 20.6 inches long. My short string, which is what I'm going to use for the crosses, is 19.6 inches long. I'll actually measure it and see how long the long string is. Alright, it's 20 and that much longer, so it's about 20.6 inches. What I'm going to do now is this racket starts at the head, so I'm just going to run 2 strings in. And then pull the 2 strings so that they're pretty much centered. Okay, and then while I'm pulling on these strings, I'm going to take this clamp and put it as close to the head as I can possibly get it. That's it right there. Now I'm going to take a starting clamp and I'm going to clamp the left side main, and I'm going to pull tension on the right side main. Set my tension and pull tension. Okay, now I'm going to take I'll take this starting clamp, just assuming you only have one, and I'm going to clamp that string off. Okay, now I've got tension on this string at reference tension, but not on the left side main. Now I'm going to take the right side main and pull on it. I'm going to take this clamp off, come down here and clamp it as close as I can get it to the frame. Alright, then I'm going to go another string on the right side of the left side of the racket. Pull my tension and move my flying clamp. Again, I'm getting it as close as I can get it to the frame. Okay? Now if I was to remove this starting clamp, I'd have a clamp down there. Then when I come up here, I'm going to have 2 clamps adjacent to each other. And I don't want to do that. So what I'm going to do is run a 3rd main on the left side of the racket. Again, as close as I can get it to the frame. Now I need to take this starting clamp off, so I'm going to pull tension. I'm going to pull tension because I don't want to get 2 clamps right up next to each other on one more string. You should never go more than 3 ahead on any side of the racket. This will be the 4th string, but I've already got 1 on the other side. So I'm going to pull tension on this one and move this clamp up here. Now I can get a clamp over here without it hitting that one. I'm going to pull tension on this string again. Clamp that one and remove my starting clamp. Take my tension off. Alright, now I can go on through stringing the racket, and I want to get to the point where both sides of the racket have the same number of strings tensioned on it. And every time I move my clamps, I want to get those clamps as close to the frame as I can get them. Alright, this will be the fourth string on the right side of the racket, which evens up both sides of the racket. Alright, now I'm going to get one string ahead on the left side of the racket. And from this point on, I'll never get more than one string ahead on either side of the racket. Now I'll do one more on the left side of the racket, which will even up the two sides. Alright, now with my clamps down here at the bottom of the racket, the top of my racket is open so that I could run in some crosses. So I'm going to go in and run in some crosses right here, unless you want to do the 50-50 method. If you want to do the 50-50 method, then you start in the center. I'm going to do it top down all the way. I'm going to start with the third cross. And the reason I start with the third is I'm going to pull tension on the top two, then have my one string ran in so that I can run the next one ahead. The towel for the crosses is over here, so I want the top cross to end up this way. So the cross will go this way, the second one goes this way, the third one goes this way. So I want this side, or the string, to go this way. So it'll be 1, 2, 3, and I'll end up tying off over here. Okay, now since I last pulled tension on this main, I want to run one more main in on this side, just so I can get one ahead on the left side of the racket. I'm going to start putting my clamps on top just to see what happens. I don't think it makes any difference. Might have a little more twisting with the clamps on top. I don't really know. If you'll notice now, this clamp wanted to turn sideways because this last main that I tensioned, when I release the tension on this side, it wants to draw back. So I'm going to try to get around that when I run in the outside main. It straightens right up when I pull tension on this string. Well, the clamp's in my way too when I run them in on top, so you might want to run them in on the bottom. I'm talking about the clamps themselves. You can tell I'm not very used to using flying clamps any longer. I'm trying to release my fixed clamps. Let me run them in on the bottom. Now I'm going to run in the outside main on this side of the racket. I'm going to pull tension, And I'm going to use my starting clamp to hold that outside main. Then I can free up, that'll free up this clamp down here. So I'm going to take that clamp off, run in the outside main on this side, pull my tension. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to clamp this one. Whoops! I'm trying to go on top again. I'm going to clamp this one. And rather than just using one clamp, I'm going to use two clamps this time to see if it reduces the twisting. And yes, it did reduce the twisting some. It'll take a lot of the drawback out of here. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to tie off this string, and I'm going to use a Parnell knot. I'm just tying a half hitch, and when I tie that half hitch, I'm going to pull it down to where there's just a small loop right here on that string. Now I'm going to tie another half hitch, and when I go down, that'll give me a big loop, and I've also got that small loop that I just created. I'm going to come up through that small loop and the big loop. Then I'm going to pull the small loop out, then I'm going to pull the big loop out. Then I can take off both my clamps. I can retension this outside main over here, remove my starting clamp, clamp both outside mains with both clamps, so I'll reduce my drawback. Then I can tie off this outside main. And I'm going to use the same principle again. First I tie an overhand knot, or excuse me, a half hitch, and pull it down to where I've just got a small loop there. Then I'll go down and tie another one, and I want to go through the small loop and this big loop up here. Okay? I like to use my starting clamp to tighten it up rather than my hand. Okay, once I've got that done, I can take my clamps off and I'm good to go. Now I'm going to cut off my tails just to get them out of the way. Alright, now there's a couple of ways that I can actually go from here. I can tie a starting knot right here and pull tension on the second cross. And I think that's the way I'm going to go. The reason I'm doing that is because the distance between the top cross and the second cross is about an inch wide. And if you look at these clamps, that's only about maybe less than a half of an inch. So if I clamp these strings together and start them the same way I did the mains, I'm going to end up with an awful lot of drawback on the string. And when I do that, it's going to give me some loose top strings. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take this second string, put it in my tie-off hole, and I'm going to tie not a starting knot, but I'm going to tie a Parnell knot again right here. The reason I like to tie a Parnell knot is because it ties up. It's easy to tie up good and tight. Okay? Now I'm going to pull my string through, and I'm going to pull my second cross through. Okay, and here you can see now that I've got probably about an inch of a distance in there. What I'm going to do is I'm going to hold up on this tail right here while I pull tension on this second cross. And the reason I'm doing that is because I want this knot to tighten up, and I don't want it to get pulled into the grommet. If it gets pulled into the grommet, then it's going to open up my grommets too much. All right. I can also tug on this string some, and that'll give me a little bit more added tension in this string up here. Now I have to figure out a way to get this thing on there. So what I'm going to do is finagle it through there and clamp it. Now I'm going to the fourth cross. And at this point right here, I haven't yet encountered the problem that you're going to encounter going through the side grommets on the O-ports. When I pull tension now, I want to get rid of all of this bowing that I've got right here in this string. So I'm going to pull this string out. Because I've got a constant pull machine, I've still got the same tension on there. Try to get the clamp as straight as you can. Okay? Now I'm going to clamp this string over on this side. And again, these strings are still pretty far apart. I'm going to get this tail out of my way here. Just clip it off. And I'm going to run in the fifth cross. I'm going to pull tension on this string. Then I'm going to take this clamp off. Straighten out these previous crosses, because I like to always keep them straight as I'm going, and clamp the third and the fourth strings. Alright, now I've got my problem that you're going to see with O-ports. When you pull tension on this string right here, let me just try to show you this way because you'll see it better. These strings are going to pull up right next to each other, and it's hard to get the clamp down in there to clamp these strings. So what I'm going to do is put my clamp down in there now, right in there, and then I'm going to pull tension. When I pull tension on it, I'm going to take this clamp off, straighten my strings out, and then clamp this string. I think I may have not tensioned this string properly, but it doesn't matter because I'm going to cut these strings out right after this demo anyway. Now I'm going to do the same thing again. If I pull tension on this string, I can't clamp those strings, so I'm going to put my clamp in there first. Then I'm going to pull tension. While I've got tension, I'll release this clamp over here. Straighten my strings out. Then clamp this string. It's always a good idea too to run one ahead, which is something that I'm not doing right now. It just makes it easier for you to get it in there. If I had these clamps on the bottom of the frame, it might be a little bit easier, but it might be easier to put them in on the top when you're just putting them on this string over here to begin with. So I'm going to keep on going the way I'm going. I'm going to tension this string. Remove the tension off this one, straighten out my strings, and then clamp this one. If you're using a drop weight machine, what you could do is actually make sure that your arm stays level as you start moving those clamps. When you pull off the far clamp, if your arm falls, you could just readjust it some. Alright, you can see here that I'm still, alright, I'm going to take and clamp these strings. Whoop, I don't want to clamp them, I just want to put my clamp in there. Pull tension, remove the far clamp, straighten my strings, and clamp this side. Tension, and if I hold the frame, I can see that I can get that in there right now. So what I'm going to do is just straighten my strings out and then clamp this string. Once I get down below the center of the turntable, or the pivot point on my turntable, then I don't have the problem where the string wants to pull up against the top of the O-port and it'll settle down on the bottom of the O-port. Another thing that you can do is when you mount the frame, you can mount the frame so that it's further down, or if you've got a drop weight machine where you've got individual standards, one for the throat and one for the head. If you mount the racket further down to where the pivot point of the turntable is higher up, you'll have this problem with fewer strings. I'm going to pull tension on this cross, remove my clamp, straighten my strings. I like to keep my strings as straight as I can get them going down there, and then clamp this string. Then I can remove my clamp, and I could be using the other clamp on this side, but I'm just going to keep moving it back and forth, and just using one clamp. Alright, then I can go all the way down to the bottom of the racket just like I would with any normal racket. Because the racket that I'm doing this for, or the person that I'm doing this for, is going to be stringing an 03 white. Let me tell you another thing about it. Down here at the bottom, I believe, excuse me, I believe the towel for the 03 white, there's no actual grommet. It's actually just a hole in the frame. So what you're going to do is, once you get to that tie-off hole and you run your string across and you go through the tie-off, it'll be marked down here so you know which one's the tie-off. Run, I believe it's 2 more strings at the bottom. Take your bottom string and go into that hole, because you don't want to be pushing an awl through that hole because there's no grommet there. There's a good chance you'll either scratch or damage the racket by pushing something through there. So just take the anchor string before you actually tension it and run the bottom 2 crosses, then put your bottom one in there. You have to have enough string now so that you can still pull tension on all 3 of these strings. Once you get all your strings tensioned, then you can go through and tie off your bottom cross. I hope that helps you, because I don't want to string this with flying clamps. I want to use my fixed clamps. I'm going to take these strings out now. That was just a short little video I did with some old strings that I wanted to show how I could start mains and crosses with flying clamps and a starting clamp.